This morning we will address the issue of relevance of Ellen White's writings for the 21st century. And this afternoon we will deal with the issue of hermeneutics. And this word comes from the Bible, from the Gospel of Luke chapter 24, of how we should interpret the Bible and the writings of Ellen White. So, as you know, I hope it will settle. Yes. Yes. Thank you. Good. If you visit some of the internet pages, you will see that there are so many people around the world telling us that if we get rid of Ellen White's writings, we would do much better as a church. So let's just remind us this morning, the time is short, but I'll mention a few examples. Why do we believe, as Adventists, that Ellen White's writings are still relevant, not only to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but to the world at large? Let me take you to the ancient city of Athens. This is the book of Acts, chapter 17. The book of Acts, chapter 17. And you remember that one day, Apostle Paul came to the city of Athens. And the city of Athens is one of the cities which was the cradle of civilization. I can imagine that probably Paul was a little bit intimidated because he was coming from not such important city of Tarsus. And here he comes. And the Bible says, I'm not going to read all these verses, but you know very well your Bibles. Luke says in the book of Acts that he was meeting in the streets of Athens Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. On a daily basis, he was going to the marketplace and he was meeting with the people and discussing with them. We are doing this very rarely today, but this is how Apostle Paul did. Epicureans, their founder was Epicurus. So these two groups of philosophers, they are mentioned here in the text, in chapter 17 of book of Acts. Epicurus believed that the goal of human life is happiness. But he also believed that there are two major obstacles to the happiness. One is the existence of gods. And this is nothing new. You who are at the university, you know that there was another great, probably the most influential thinker of the 20th century, French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He expressed the same idea. So Epicurus believed that the existence of gods, many gods, it was a polytheistic world, that the existence of God is an obstacle to human happiness. And this is what believed Jean-Paul Sartre. He said, if God is looking at us through the heavenly keyhole, we do not exist. We are not free human beings. So Sartre would claim God or us, since we exist, God does not exist. But Epicurus found another solution to the existence of gods. He said to his contemporaries, don't worry about gods. Yes, they do exist, but they are not interested in what is going on this planet. Be happy. And then there was another obstacle for Epicurus for human happiness, and it was the existence of death. And this problem is still the greatest, I think, obstacle to human happiness. And Epicurus came with a famous sentence that everybody knows in philosophy. He said, where death is, we are not. Where we are, death is not. Meaning, when we die, we are not going to be there. This is the end of everything. And you will see in the book, in that famous speech of Apostle Paul, Paul is going to speak about anastasis, or resurrection of Jesus. It was something completely opposite to the worldview of Epicureans. And there was another philosophical group there that Apostle Paul met on that day. And they were called Stoicism, Stoics. And just to remind you that Stoics were competing for the minds of people with Christianity in the first several centuries. Stoics believed that human beings, by eliminating all emotions, they can reach some kind of enlightened state. And when they find themselves in that enlightened state, they can be happy. And they were kind of pantheists. They did not believe that God is a person, but he is kind of force or power which permeates the whole of reality. And Apostle Paul is going to speak about God, who is the person who created the world. Paul starts with creation of the world. And they said, let's see what this bubbler has to say. There were 3 holy sites, even today, in the city of Athens. I was teaching one class last semester at Newbold, and I had one student from Greece, real Greek guy. And he was on Moodle with us. This is like something like Skype on a daily basis. So he gave us a great contribution concerning these holy sites in the city of Athens. And probably everybody knows here that the most holy place in the city of Athens is Acropolis. This is what you see on TV when they show you the city of Athens. It was believed in the time of the Apostle Paul that Acropolis is the place where Zeus dwells, their highest god, and other gods. A little bit lower, geographically lower. If you go down from Acropolis, down, you will find the second holy place of the city of Athens, which is called Areopagus. Areopagus was the place for moral, philosophical, and religious discussion. Areopagus is a huge piece of rock, maybe like half of this church. And when I visited Areopagus the first time, I hardly could climb. Today, after the Olympic Games in the city of Athens, they put some stairs, so it is much easier to climb today. When I was there, I was with one of my former students in Greece. We spent 5-6 hours there. There are thousands of people, literally, from all around the world, coming on a daily basis, especially pastors from the United States. They bring some of their members, they sit them there, and they want to preach from the same place where Apostle Paul preached. The third holy place of the city of Athens is Agora. Agora exists even today. It is geographically even lower. It is the place where Greeks were doing business, even today. So there is Apostle Paul, and they took him to Areopagus. When you stand on Areopagus, you can see the city of Athens on the right side, swimming in the Mediterranean sunshine. And on the left side, you see the sea and ships passing by. And now, do you remember what were the first words that Apostle Paul said to the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers? The first words. The first words, I'm not going now to, but you have the text in front of you, you can check. The first words were, men of Athens. And of course, Bible commentators throughout centuries, they were thinking, why Paul, in probably one of the most important speeches that he made in his life, why he started his speech with men of Athens? Probably because he knew that Athenians were very proud people, proud of their history, proud of their nation. There is a great German poet by the name of Goethe. Goethe said that there was a threefold light shining upon the city of Athens. The first light shining upon the city of Athens was the light some of the most powerful people who ever lived on this planet. And you know some of them, Spartans, for example. Hollywood made a movie about Spartans. Maybe you have seen this movie. They were some of the most courageous soldiers in human history. Powerful soldiers. the Greek authorities or Spartans were taken as kids at a very early age and trained through the very rigorous exercises. Once when Persians attacked Greece, they defended one passage up to the last man. And what to say about Alexander the Great, one of the greatest military leaders of all human history. Athenians were proud of their history. Some of the most powerful people who ever lived on this planet, they were there. And then Apostle Paul is going to speak about Jesus, who died on the cross, and whose last words have been, "Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they are doing." Was Paul naive? Jesus against Alexander the Great. Jesus against the Spartans. Greeks were not interested in forgiveness. Greeks, as Apostle Paul will mention, were not interested in the cross. There was the second light shining upon the city of Athens, and this is the light of wisdom, human wisdom. Some of the wisest people who ever lived on this planet lived in the city of Athens. And you probably know that all Western universities are still founded on the logic of Aristotle. We usually say in philosophy, whatever is said after Plato are just footnotes to Plato. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. And then comes Apostle Paul, and he speaks to Epicurean and Stoic philosophers about somebody from Palestine who said, "I am the truth." The only truth, not Socrates, not Plato, not Aristotle. Was Paul naive about his mission in the city of Athens? There was a third light shining upon the city of Athens, and this is the light of aesthetics. Goethe said that ancient Greeks had sense for beauty. Every window frame or every fence around the house was a small piece of art. But for Jesus, prophet Isaiah says that there was no external beauty on him. Was Paul naive? Jesus against Alexander the Great. Jesus against Spartans. Jesus against Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Jesus who did not bring some beauty that they were looking for. But just remember, brothers and sisters, that Paul was not any kind of person. He was the prophet of God. He had two different pairs of eyes. He had physical eyes, but he also had spiritual eyes. And as a prophet of God, he knew something that nobody else probably in that group today didn't know. He knew that if Athens, that beautiful city, if Athens do not come to the knowledge of Jesus, it is nothing but ruin and destruction. Why? One author says that Paul saw the sadness, I'm quoting now, he saw the sadness of the transitory nature of all things. Because Paul knew that Alexander the Great, Spartans, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, they cannot help the citizens of Athens. There was only one person under the sun, somebody who conquered the death, could help them. And with his prophetic eyes, he could see the real needs of the city of Athens. For Paul, Athens is nothing but destruction and ruin if they don't come to the knowledge of Jesus. And he would speak with great assurance there about the God who created the world and about the God who revealed himself in the person of Jesus, and he resurrected him from the dead. This is the only hope, says Paul to the Athenians. It was the prophetic vision for the lost world that Apostle Paul demonstrated on that day when he was standing on Areopagus. Brothers and sisters, I firmly believe that prophetic vision for the lost world has been given to the Adventist Church through the writings of Ellen White. Let me just quote something from Ellen White. It was in 1892. Ellen White was in Melbourne, Australia. And it was at the opening of Melbourne School, Bible College. That day on the platform in Melbourne was Ellen White and some other very respected gentlemen, nicely dressed. Among them was A.G. Daniels, the future president of the General Conference. At one point, Ellen White came to the pulpit, and here is what she said. Before I quote what she said, let me just remind you that at that time, in 1892, we had 34,000 members around the world. Ellen White stood to the pulpit, and here is what she said. She said, this message, meaning the three angels' message, it has to go to India, China, Africa, and to the islands of the sea. And when we look from today's perspective, I come from the little country of Serbia. Some of you come from Jamaica, from Africa. So we can understand this. But just remember, at that time, 34,000 members. And Ellen White says, this message has to go to India, China, Africa, and as if it was not enough, she says, to the islands of the sea. A.G. Daniels later wrote about his reaction when he listened to Ellen White speaking. And A.G. Daniels said, to enter those countries, to build schools, to learn all the difficult languages, medical institutions, all this seemed to us like the wildest kind of speculation. Do you hear this? To enter those countries, to learn the difficult languages, to build schools, hospitals, all this seemed like the wildest kind of speculation to us. So I think, in all honesty, that we as a church, we are a little bit losing that vision for the lost world. But it has been given to us through the writings of Ellen White. Today, as you know, the church is a worldwide church. I've been recently in Japan as part of BRI members, and we had the ministers' meeting. I was told there today, I was told that the largest Adventist church today is not in the Western world. It is in China. It has more than 20,000 members. And I was surprised to learn that it is led by a woman pastor, Chinese woman. So if you take only this element and listen to what Ellen White said many years ago, vision for the lost world, we have constantly to rekindle that vision for the lost world. This is first, I believe, great contribution of Ellen White to the world at large and to the Adventist Church in particular. Let me mention the second great contribution of Ellen White. And for me, it is extremely important. This is the worldview that we have. Worldview. Maybe you are not aware of this, how important it is. In theology, we use another word for this. We use the German word, Weltanschauung, or the worldview. This is the way how we perceive reality. In philosophy, it is called metaphysics. What is our metaphysical perception of reality? What is our perception of the stars, of the black matter, dark black holes, strong nuclear energy, weak nuclear energy, gravity, force of gravity, stones, trees, human beings, animals, human history? How do we perceive all of this? Seventh-day Adventist perception of reality of the world is called the Great Controversy. But Great Controversy is more than a book. This is the worldview. This is how we perceive the reality. If you look at the world, there are many worldviews today. If you go, for example, to Hindu or Buddhist, they have the circular worldview. If you go to the theory of evolution, it is different worldview. Adventists have their worldview in the very name that they have. We are called Seventh Day. And Seventh Day is there to remind us that there was a meaningful beginning of human history. That's why creation is so important to us. If you come to the streets of Birmingham today and you talk to somebody about the second coming of Christ, they would look at you as another lunatic. But if you speak about the meaningful beginning of human history, it is a different story. I've been only once here on BBC on the big questions. I see that it is not anymore on TV. But I've been with many university professors from Cambridge, Oxford, and so on. And before we went on the show, we discussed. And this is a big issue, how everything started. The theory of evolution does not have any answer to this question. Theory of evolution begins with already existing DNA and RNA molecules. So we believe that there is a meaningful beginning of human history, that God created this planet and the whole universe. And if there is this is seventh day, Sabbath is reminding us of this meaningful beginning. But we also believe that there is a meaningful end of human history. This is the word Adventist, seventh day, taking us back to the beginning of human history. And Adventist, it is taking us to the future. And if there is a meaningful beginning and if there is a meaningful end, we believe that human beings can have more meaningful present. Anxiety, depression, this is the theme of the day in the world today. But if there is a God who gave a meaning to human life and to human history, and He will have the final word, we can have more meaningful lives even today. This is in the very name. You know that some suggested the name for our church to be called the Church of God. But then they have decided to go for the meaningful name of our church. And this is, you know that there is only one text in the Bible which contains the definition of faith. This is Hebrews chapter 11. It says, faith is being certain of what we hope for. This is the second coming. But then a $1 million question for you, like for children. What does it mean, the second sentence? Faith is being sure of what we hope for, second coming. And being certain of what we do not see. What is that? Being certain of what we do not see. The Greek word which is used there is blepomenon. And in verse 3, it is related to creation. So what is faith? Faith is to believe in the second coming, but it is also to believe on the basis of creation. It was Blaise Pascal who said to all the doubters of this world that there is a meaningful end of human history. Blaise Pascal said, what is more difficult? To believe that something will happen that never existed, or to believe that something will exist that already had existed? The miracle of life already existed. Do you agree with me? Life is a miracle. Is it? Yes, it is. So we have seen life. So it is much easier to us to know that if God had already created life, He is able to do this again in the future. So our worldview it is the great controversy. There was a meaningful beginning, but sin entered into the human history. There is a great controversy between evil and good today. But God will have the final saying in human history. This is our worldview. And this has been given to us through the writings of Ellen White. This is the second great contribution of Ellen White. The first one more time. This is the vision for the lost world. The second great contribution of Ellen White is the vision, the perception, the worldview that we have of reality as a whole. Let me speak about the third great relevance of Ellen White's writings for the church and for the world at large. And this is the centrality of the Bible for our theology and our practice. And this is the tricky one. And I don't want you to leave this place with some doubts, but I will tell you what we believe and what is in our books, documents, as a church. So, do we believe in the sola scriptura principle? Sola scriptura means only scriptures, only Bible. But sometimes you hear from the pulpit of Adventist Church, this is the Bible and the writings of Ellen White. Do you hear this? Let me now tell you, we believe what we believe on the basis of Bible. Period. Why I am telling you? I'll explain this. You can immediately ask the question. Then what about the writings of Ellen White? We believe that the writings of Ellen White are as inspired as the Bible. We don't believe in the degrees of inspiration. We believe that Ellen White's writings are authoritative for the church. But we believe that the writings of Ellen White have different role than the scriptures. And I'm quoting now from our documents. It is called 10 Affirmations and 10 Denials. This is the last time the church has taken official stand. It was printed in Ministry Magazine in 1982, August. In one of the affirmations you have, the role of Ellen White's writings is to help us to better understand the Bible and to put it in practice. One more time. We believe what we believe on the basis of the Bible alone. The role of Ellen White's writings is to help us to better understand the Bible and to put it in practice. Now, let me go one step further. If you ask a Roman Catholic, why do you believe what you believe? If he knows what his or her church believes, he will never tell you, I believe what I believe because the Bible says so. He will tell you, I believe what I believe because the church says so. Sometimes in the Roman Catholic documents, especially in the documents of the Tridentine Council, this is the most important council in the history of Roman Catholic Church, they say that the Bible are dead letters and the Bible need a living interpreter. And who is the living interpreter? It is the church, the so-called Holy Magisterium, Pope and cardinals. They are the church. They are supposed to interpret the Bible to the people. The Bible is not on the second place. The tradition is on the second place. The Bible is only on the third place. But they believe that since the tradition and the church existed before the Bible, they are superior to the Bible. We do not accept this. I don't have time to explain why, but we do not believe this. In the Orthodox world, maybe you are less acquainted with the Russia, Greece, Romania, and all these Orthodox world. They don't have Holy Magisterium, Pope and cardinals, but they have the Bible and the tradition. But the tradition rules over the Bible. That's why I became an Adventist. The tradition rules. If you go to the Mormons, they have the Bible and the Book of Mormon. You know this? You meet them, you see them. And if you discuss with them a little bit more, but then what is superior? They will tell you, since the Book of Mormon is the last one, it is superior to the Bible. We do not accept this. We should, I think, dearly keep to the principle sola scriptura. We believe what we believe on the basis of the Bible alone. We are thankful. Let me also tell you now, I firmly believe that had God not spoken through the writings of Ellen White, the miracle of Seventh-day Adventist Church would not exist today. This is what I believe. Still, we have to be theologically sound and to say that the role of Ellen White's writings is not to replace the Bible. The role is to help us to better understand the Bible and put it in practice. The Bible remains the only authority for our church. Let me mention a third great contribution, although probably the time is coming to close. I was fully converted when I studied at Athens University, and we had a class on Christology. And you have a very complex theological issue when it comes to the human nature of Christ in the Bible itself. And because you have one set of text telling us that Jesus' human nature was exactly as ours. But there is another set of text telling us that his human nature was different than ours. And when you read this apparent tension in the Bible, and when you go to Ellen White's statement on human nature of Christ, you see exactly the same statements. I can speak for another hour about Ellen White's understanding of the human nature of Christ, but this is so well taken. When I read that, after studying the Bible, I told myself, this lady who didn't know Greek or Hebrew, although she had one Greek grammar in her library, it has to be something supernatural. So yes, Ellen White made a huge contribution to the nature of Christ. You know that many of our pioneers, they have been semi-Arians, like Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are an offshoot of Adventist Church, not exactly of Adventist Church, but from the Millerites. And they are Arians. They believe that Jesus was greater than human beings, greater than angels, but not fully God. He was created at one point in human history. Ellen White stated that the divine nature of Jesus is underived and unborrowed. You hear this? Your English much better than mine, but you understand these theological depth and significance of these words. The nature of Jesus was underived and unborrowed. And this is another big issue, but she made great contribution in that field of human nature of Jesus. Let me mention something else. The righteousness by faith. You also know, this is not a secret, but that before 1888 General Conference, the position of all the leaders in Adventist Church on the justification issue was exactly like Roman Catholic position. That we are saved by faith and works. And that at that conference, and this is another lecture, or maybe 1 hour, I'm going just to mention this. Ellen White, in spite of all the leaders of that time, she took the position of these two young ministers. That's why today we have righteousness by faith in our church. So Ellen White did not bring out of her studies or visions any doctrine of our church. But every time our leaders, after studying the Bible, they were at the crossroads, there she was with the prophetic gift to lead the church. And that's why I think I believe we would not exist as a church without that guidance. At the end, it is 1 o'clock. Let me mention one more thing and I'll stop. And this is health and healthful living. You all know here that this uneducated lady, she created one group of longest living people on planet Earth. There are some people in Japan, Okinawa, in Italy, Sardinia, and in Loma Linda. I usually go once a year to Loma Linda for some meetings, and I preach in one of the churches in LA. And there are several people there older than 100 years. Their color of the skin is a little bit changed, but they are still passionate in discussing Sabbath school lesson. And I'm happy always to be in their class. Let me tell you my personal experience when I worked in former Yugoslavia. One day, and I'll stop with this. One of the conference presidents from Bosnia and Herzegovina, some of you may know that the First World War started there in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in the city of Sarajevo. And the conference president phoned me and he said, we have an urgent need here. We are invited to participate in the live TV show tonight at 8 o'clock. This is prime time when everybody's watching. And this was a time of war. And they invited me to come. So I drove through some narrow roads because we couldn't go on the highway because of the war. It was snowing. When I came to that studio, I saw an arrogant, handsome young journalist who was supposed to lead that discussion. And the war in Bosnia was between three ethnic groups: Catholics, Orthodox, and Muslims. And when I came there, I saw that handsome young journalist. There was a Catholic priest in his clothes. There was Orthodox priest with long beard and this. And there was Hare Krishna with shaved head and the long tail, you know how it looks like. And then there were 150 students in the audience. They were supposed to ask the questions later. We were supposed to be on the air 1 hour. We were on the air 2.5 hours. But after maybe 20 minutes, the audience was divided. Seventh Adventist and the rest of the world. Because people were calling studio and they throw all their poisonous arrows at me. And at one point, this is why I'm telling you this story. At one point, this young, arrogant journalist turned toward me. And he said, Professor Antic, you don't seem to be a stupid man. But wouldn't you be much better off without that old lady, Ellen White? Why don't you get rid of her? Many more people in Bosnia would have come to your church. It was a difficult moment for me. I was pastoring for many years and preaching in public halls, but I knew that at least 2-3 million people were watching this. And all Seventh Adventists were watching. So I have to admit it was, because I knew that most of the people outside, they never heard about Ellen White. They didn't know anything. What shall I say? So, in all honesty, I have to say I played a little bit Russian roulette, but I also experienced the touch of God. In that seconds, when you are on TV, seconds are important. You don't have time to. So I said to that young journalist, I wanted to put him down a little bit. So I said, young man, that's why I call him young, you are following Ellen White also. And he said, God forbid, I'm Orthodox. But I also said, not only you, but my Catholic friend and Orthodox, they also follow Ellen White in some ways. And I said, Hare Krishna, he's almost there, because I knew that they have some strict rules, diets, and so on and so on. And then he said to me, what are you talking about? We don't understand how we can follow Ellen White. We have nothing to do with her. And then I risked everything, you know. I asked him, please tell me, what did you have for breakfast this morning? He could have said whatever. You know. But then I saw really the touch of God. He said, he didn't want to answer immediately, but after he said, I had cornflakes with strawberries. And then I jumped immediately and I said, you see, young man, this breakfast was given to you by Ellen White. And not only to you, but to the whole world. Is it true? Yes, it is. Go wherever you want on this planet. You go to the hotels, and every breakfast has Kellogg's cornflakes and Weet-Bix and so on. We have given breakfast to the world, at least. This is true. And I think I can speak about another, but let me summarize what I said up to this point. Are Ellen White writings still relevant for our church? Yes, they are. We have been given, through the writings of Ellen White, the vision for the lost world. We have been given our worldview, how we perceive human history and reality as a whole. Through the writings of Ellen White, we have been given the centrality of the Bible in our theology and our practice. Ellen White, through the divine inspiration, explained to us human nature and nature of Christ. And of course, great contribution is justification by faith and health and healthful living. She also contributed to the structure of the church. She contributed to the human rights issue. And you know, I can speak also about this greatly. So I think we should be grateful to God for this spiritual gift that we have received as a church. And may God, you know, in the United States, they surveyed pastors, non-Adventist pastors, younger than 40 years of age. And they asked them, what are 3 favorite authors that you are using when you prepare your sermons? And pastors younger than 40 years of age, non-Adventists, they said that one of the 3 favorite authors they are using when they prepare sermons is Ellen White. If we don't use this great gift, maybe somebody else will. May God help us to hear the prophetic voice in our church. Amen.